All right, we are ready to go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hello from New Jersey. Welcome. It's very exciting. Here we have a couple of wonderful ladies on our Atlanta Ballet staff, and we're just here to get together, kind of rehash all of the beauty and craziness that is Nutcracker. This Nutcracker was a little bit different after having a year off and also transitioning into a new space. So housekeeping up top, as you can see in the chat, if you can keep your video and your microphones off, and then if you have any questions, feel free to send them into the chat so everybody can view them. I'll try and grab them as they come. We do recommend speaker view because we are spotlighted, which will be great. My name is Darian Kane. I am a dancer with Atlanta Ballet. This is my 4th season with the company. And here joining us, we have our company manager, Sicily Palms, our wardrobe supervisor, Abby Parker, and our center faculty and student rehearsal assistant, Abigail Pangamino. We are going by Abigail for her today, just so we can make the distinction between the two of them. If you guys don't mind, really quick, just going through and talking a little bit about what you do for the company so that we can all get acclimated with your responsibilities, and then we'll jump into everything. Sicily, you go first.
I'm going. Okay. Hi, everybody. I am the company manager, and essentially my job is to handle all the logistics and communications related to the company dancers and guest artists coming in. I'm the gatherer and source of information for our daily functions, 2 of those important ones being scheduling and casting. Nutcracker specifically and performance specifically, I'm backstage when the dancers are backstage. And essentially every day I'm answering the questions, hopefully before they're asked, of where do I have to go? What do I have to do when I get there? What am I dancing? Am I supposed to wear something? Am I supposed to put a wig on? Am I supposed to have makeup on? Will photos be taken? Is physical therapy available? Lots and lots of questions and information. So my job is essentially to organize that and get it out to the dancers daily, so that they can focus on what they need to do dancing. We have a handy portal online, and that's where they get all their information, and then they receive lots of update emails from me. And in Nutcracker, this ended up being almost 10 a day. So we'll talk more about that later, but in the meantime, I will hand it off to the next Abby.
Hello, I have 2 hats. I'm the wardrobe supervisor and I am the shoe manager, the company shoe manager. So breaking those down, for shoes, I am in charge of everybody's inventories of their point shoes, ballet shoes, any weird shoes that we have for a show, like boots or anything like that. I do all of the ordering, and I help the dancers keep track of how many pairs they have out, what kind of customizations we're doing on them, and yeah, generally do that. And then as the wardrobe supervisor, I'm the one that takes over when we go to the theater for costume supervision. So I have a team of dressers that are union, and they are amazing. And I give them anything that they need to be able to help the dancers get dressed, help with quick changes, help with laundry, and keeping everything smelling as fresh as it can. And in this past show of Nutcracker, with the whole COVID thing, another big part of my job became rearranging who's wearing what and running around telling the dancers which costume they would be wearing that evening.
And now I'm the next Abby. I'm Abigail Pangamino, and I actually joined the organization back in 2010 as a company dancer. And after a few years, I was ready to stop dancing professionally. So I transitioned into becoming part of the center as a center faculty. And now I mainly teach the academy division. Excuse me. Thank you. Academy division, and I also help with the setting of the choreographies for the kids during the Nutcracker, and also for our February production for the second company, which, by the way, we're gonna be at the theater next week at the CPAC. So if you can check out our Snow White, it would be great to see everybody. And the kids are working really, really hard and very excited to show this performance. So thank you.
Great, guys. Yeah, one of the things about doing Zooms like this is that we have, I think all of us have dependents with us, or some of our guests. So we have either children or babies or dogs. So just bear with us in case they decide that they want a little piece of this conversation. Up top, I would like to start with Sicily. This Nutcracker was definitely different, especially in terms of complexity. There were numerous amounts of protocols and regulations we had to follow through with, just in order to keep our audience members, our dancers, our crew, staff, and children safe. So I think it would be great if you could just walk us through some of the things we did with that, and our partnership with Epitome Health Solutions, who was responsible for all of our dancer testing throughout the production. Just kind of give us a taste of what each day looked like as we navigated performing and putting on a production as safely as possible.
Yeah. So we have been following as closely as possible the CDC guidelines, and that is continuously developing. So we have had to shift along with that, like I said, daily. Front of house, all our patrons were required to have either proof of vaccination or a negative test. And then backstage, absolutely everyone that was eligible was required to have that vaccination, so we could keep everybody as safe as possible. And then on top of that, we had Epitome, our partner, backstage testing regularly, everyone backstage. Our protocols were extremely strict, and I agree that that was why we made it through all 30. If you include the Kids and Step shows, that's why we were able to make it all the way through. That was not without its challenges, of course, and we can talk more about that with casting.
Oh yeah.
With casting, we had a rainbow. So let me paint the picture of casting. Casting is this giant Excel sheet that's live that has all of the casting for our entire show. And it is all the way across the screen, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And that turned into a literal rainbow, because we have changes we would usually turn yellow. And we just went down through all the colors. And at one point we got to even the point where Gennady, our director, changed it to blue and said, you know what, maybe it'll make everybody chill a little bit. We'll do blue.
Yeah.
Make it calm.
So usually what happens is the start of Nutcracker, we have a set number of casts. So most years we do casts 1 through 4, but everybody crosses over in each cast, which is why we need spreadsheets and colors that kind of help things remain clear. So a lot of times the first challenge of casting is avoiding double booking. That happens every year, no matter what. But because we all perform multiple things, there's a domino effect via either injury or sickness. And so when someone drops out, it kind of has this effect where it goes down the first column, and then from the second column in, and then circles to the fourth. And basically, even one person that seems insignificant, once they get bumped out and a cover goes in, who fills that empty gap? And it shifts. And so it goes from 0 to 100 in a matter of one body. That is a normal Nutcracker thing. And then you multiply with all of the extra variables we dealt with on top of injuries. And due to being really strict, it was kind of one of those things where even the slightest feint of I'm not feeling well, gone. Because we could not afford it. So there was this this extra shuffling that was happening. And I think this is probably the most interesting thing that I observed during Nutcracker, which is that Sicily was on top of it all the time, sending out emails, scheduling emergency rehearsals, dealing with all the casting changes that it required. But because of that, she kind of became the little like rain cloud in the hallway. And it was like, she would go grab someone from the dressing room. They were gone, disappeared for multiple days at a time. And then we were always getting emails. And so one of the unfortunate things is, despite the fact that we all love Sicily and love to see her presence during Nutcracker often meant that things were not going well. And so I find that so interesting, because I can imagine it would be very isolating in the workplace to kind of walk into a room and people go silent, which I observed happen many, many times. And so I kind of want to know how you handled that emotionally, or if it affected you and your willingness to show up to work, because there were times where I'm sure you did not feel welcome from dancers and artistic staff. And that's unfortunate, because it has nothing to do with who you are as a person.
Yeah, it was honestly, well, I mean, this is COVID times in general, right? COVID times in general, kind of a bummer. But the show must go on. And that's kind of the way I operated. It made me sad, of course, mainly because usually when I see you guys, it's Sicily, yay! And it was like, Sicily, oh no, what's happening?
Yeah, I remember the one time, it was so specific. This one moment, we were all getting ready for the show. We were in the green room and you walked in and it was just total tension. And you looked at everyone, you're like, I just want to make some tea. I'm sorry. Everything's okay. And it's so sad, because we really do love having you around.
Yeah, well, and I felt bad for you guys because you have such an important job to do. And I mean, I feel like that's why we all do our job, is because we know that getting that show on stage matters so much to so many people, right? And I know that you guys know that too. That's why you do your job, the dancers. And I want you to be able to do that without stress. So kind of my goal and focus during Nutcracker was just trying to get us all through at the minimum stress level, staying calm so that everybody can still do their job. Calm was not always possible. Sometimes I had to run down the hallway. Many people had to run down the hallway to make things happen, right? I think that all of us on this call at one point were physically running down the hallway to make changes happen and make sure that people were pulled that needed to get pulled. Costumes were on people, like bloomers got pulled so that somebody would have pants on stage. All the things.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's really beautiful that the way you process that emotionally was almost to take extra care and consideration into what your presence or what your presence symbolized within the hallways, and that you were always trying to maintain a sense of reassurance as much as possible. And so I just want to say thank you for that, and that you are very appreciated among all the dancers and the staff. But speaking of casting changes, that is a great time to take us to Abby Parker to talk about what happens when one person goes out and then the person who fills in is supposed to be wearing the same costume as someone else who's already in it. And how do you guys adjust that? And is there a system for what you do with costuming when things go awry? Or is it just kind of grab this, oh, this is bad, let's see what we can do. Hello, laundry, do we have anything in the dryer? Tell me a little bit about what you guys do when you find out about casting changes.
Well, in the past, before this iteration, it was more like you were saying, oh, okay, well, y'all are in the same costume, so let's just grab one that will fit. Because it wasn't usually that big of a deal. Thankfully, we have in our Nutcracker costumes, they are sized, a lot of them, where we'll have a tall and a short of each one, so usually we're able to put somebody in something. This year, I did develop a system. We numbered all of the group numbers, the flowers and the snowflakes, we numbered all of the costumes, and pretty much as we went, if I put a costume on somebody and it fit them, I wrote their name in it. So there were a handful of costumes by the end that had like 7 names in it. And that way I knew, and I love my spreadsheets, and I had a spreadsheet that said every single costume that each person could wear, so that I could look at that and go, okay, this person is here and this person is here. So we'll put them in this one and then in this one. And so I would be running around upstairs going, okay, you're going to be in flower number 12 today, and you're going to be in flower number 3. You need to be in snow number 2. And so that was basically our system for this, because it did just get crazy, and also, thankfully, I've been in the costume shop now for a few years. And so I know most of the dancers' sizes pretty well. So it's easier to be able to say, okay, well, Darian is going in for, or Darian is going in for somebody. And so Rika has to go in for Darian. Well, they're about the same size, so she should be able to wear her costume, or, if Erica's going in for Ashley Wegman, they're not going to be able to share a costume, because there's a difference of about 8 inches in their height. So knowing that.
Yeah. I think it's always been very clear to me in our discussions that you have an excellent memory, and that is so key for what you do, not only with costuming, but also with shoes, which is what I want to get into next. A little breakdown of our shoes for the show. Almost every single roll requires a different color shoe to be sprayed, which means that when we have a shoe that goes soft, we can't retire it into a different roll, which means that we usually tend to double up on how many point shoes we use before they're too soft and we can't dance in them. So we're constantly going through shoes, and we're constantly spraying them red, white, tan, sewing costumes onto it, black for Arabian. So you have developed a wonderful system that I've never experienced in any other company, which is we actually have a spreadsheet that we can log into, and we can check how many shoes we have in stock. And if we have different versions of our shoes, then we can check how many we have of each of those. And so when we run out of shoes, or when we find that we need new pairs and we're looking to spray more because we don't have enough for our shows or for our roles, we actually have a system that we can log into and order our shoes, and then Abby will deliver them for us, and they will kind of magically show up at the theater every couple days. But I know that you have to hand dye some of our shoes, specifically the dragonflies. They have to be multicolored. So how do you do that with the different colors?
With a lot of trial and error, I figured out the right combination of colors. Usually it is layering a very, very light base color. And then I have, they're called tints, like TINT. And it's a very, very light spray of a very rich color. So I'll put that on top. And then I have another lighter that goes over the whole thing to kind of tone it down and mix it up, so that it ends up looking a little bit like watercolor, because it has to match the bottom of an ombre unitard.
Yeah, it's quite complicated, actually. And then just because I find it so impressive and I have to like brag for you, I just want to let everybody know that she has every single female company dancer's shoe information memorized and can place all of the orders without looking at her spreadsheet or a single piece of paper, which is pretty complicated, especially since I have 7 different versions of my shoes. But you've actually been very patient with me. We figured out this beautiful system, since I have to fit certain costumes inside of my point shoes and they take up more room. We actually reserve certain versions of my shoes for those because they have a little bit more room to accommodate for my feet when they swell. Why do I have 7 different types? I wish I knew the answer. If there was a simple answer, there would be. Sometimes your feet change muscularly over time, depending on the rep you're doing, and especially if you're doing something more classical and you have a series of big turns on one leg, oftentimes the foot structure will change because of the load that it's bearing. And old shoes that used to fit you really well no longer do. So they're called specs, and it just is basically all the small details about the ratio of your heel height to the how high your glue goes in the shoe. And so I kind of have taken this opportunity since I've been here to adjust things when I feel like I need something different in my shoes. And then sometimes what I think I need is very different than what I thought, what ends up happening. And so I'll get a pair of shoes and I'm like, oh, Abby, they're terrible. I never want to wear these. And then we have like version number 5, which is just unusable. And so it's a process of trial and error trying to get the shoe to fit our specific needs at any given point.
Also, a lot of times people will end up with a lot of different specifications because we don't want to put too many changes into a shoe at once, because then it's like putting on a foreign shoe, So I think, for instance, with yours, version 4, we added a harder bottom to the insole. And then version 5, we added glue to the box. So, but to do both at the same time is a lot. So, and version 7 has both of those in it. And then some other changes, so you don't want to do too many changes at once, because then you can't really tell what that specific change has done.
You have to isolate the variables to figure out what works and what doesn't. Yeah, so the box of the shoe is, I got my foot right here. So the box of the shoe is actually what goes around the top of the foot. I think if you want to pull out your shoe model, I know you have like a really wonderful shoe model right near you.
This?
Yeah. So the box would be the tip. Yes.
Like this,
so that
this
would be referred to as the box. And then the shank is that green line underneath. And then the heel is obviously the heel of the foot. Pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Not a foot isn't a point shoe.
So Abby, is there anything that you learned strategically throughout all the costume changes during Nutcracker that you will take into managing costumes and supervising things for our future shows coming up?
Absolutely. One of the things that we usually do is when we label the costumes and put people's names in them, we will number them by which cast they're in. And I have just asked in the future, if it fits them, put their name in it, period. Don't number it, because they'll go in for other casts, and then casting gets changed at the last minute, and it just gets really confusing, because then people are like, oh, but she's cast 3 and I'm like, if they fit the dress, just put their name in it. And we will figure out if they wear, and having that as a system helps a lot, because then I know where I can pull from. Some other things that I definitely learned are to be flexible. I am lawful good. So I like to have parameters, and I like to have limits, and I like to have my spreadsheets and everything. And, at the beginning, I printed out these amazing little folders for all of my dressers that had all of the dates with who's doing what, and whether they're upstairs or downstairs, so we could move the costumes around. And, thinking that we were going to have this amazing system of being able to move costumes to the dressing rooms they need to be in, until we did it the first time. And I ended up on the floor in tears, because I was like, there's no way that we can do this every day. And so we pulled all of the shared costumes out into the hallway And
Mhm.
the dancers would grab whatever they were wearing that day and take it into the dressing room and then hang it back up in the hallway at the end of the day, because
Yeah.
it's just 400 something costumes. It's just too many to keep track of. And that actually worked so well. I think we're going to do it on the next show too, because otherwise we're traveling 100 and something costumes up and down the stairs and between dressing rooms every single time we do something.
And very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Very quickly.
Mhm.
Yes.
When things happen and you have to run.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the general theme of what happens when you have the strategy and the logistics on top of the creative and the chaos in regards to any live theater performance is constantly anticipating the amount of chaos or the level of like variables to accommodate for, and then also understanding that no amount of projecting into the future disaster scenarios is actually going to prepare you for some of the things that actually happen. And so it's like, prepare but improvise as well, and don't hold on to your preparations and don't anticipate that, because you're probably wrong and it will change. So I always find that to be super entertaining on the administrative side. To answer a question in the chat, point shoes are almost precisely designed so that all of the weight bearing happens on the toes. And then the shank, which supports the bottom of the foot, is usually, we bend it as dancers to match a certain point in our arch. So there physically feels like there's a little shelf that our heel sits on that will kind of bear some of the weight, but it is pretty much all in the toes. That's kind of the name of the game. So moving forward, Abigail, you are the furthest removed from my concept of this production, which is funny because I share the stage with some of the children, but you were in charge of rehearsing an entire new group of children for Nutcracker. And I don't know if some of them had previously been in the Fox. So maybe if some had been in the Fox, they now transitioned to a new theater. They were dealing with new masking accommodations and a new rehearsal process, returning back into being socially integrated, and then also jumping onto stage. So if you could talk a little bit about your experience prepping the kids and kind of what you found, especially I think in their temperament and relationship with how they managed going on stage. I think that would be really nice to
That's a
hear
lot
from you
of
about.
questions in one.
Oh, just give me,
I'll try to remember.
We'll start at the top and go to the bottom. No worries.
No, but I do remember there was a conversation earlier on that we're thinking if we should cut off the kids altogether or not, or stuff like that. And if I'm not mistaken, actually, I think some companies actually did take off kids. I think
A lot of companies, yeah.
A lot. Okay. Yeah. So for me personally, I thought, I understand that you want to keep the dancers, the company members safe, but at the same time, especially for the Nutcracker, it's the presence of the company and the presence of the kids. It has to be 50-50. Like they need to be together. So I'm really happy when they decided that we'll put the kids on in wearing masks. It's mandated that they're wearing masks, which is, I think it's fair, because even in classes, we always wear masks anyway. So I don't think it would really change anything. And the wardrobe is also amazing because they were able to add the mask as part of their costume. So for example, for the stars, their costume is actually like very shiny and bedazzled. And they were able to do that with their mask. And like for my child, Ania, like who you saw earlier, it's her first time and she was part of the chicks. And she was so excited when she saw her beak. And that beak was a mask. So that was actually pretty amazing that they were able to do that. Now, usually, like, for example, when Yuri choreographed this back in 2010, so we would have some kids who would repeat roles for 2019. So when we did it the second time, we had some kids who knew it. And of course, we add some new ones who wanted to be part of it. And for 2020, we stopped, right? Everything stopped. And then once we were back last year, we were shocked to see how tall our old kids grew. So for example, our Fritz, we usually have forecasts of Fritz. So some move on, but most of them actually are still with us. But then when we saw each other in the hallway, they were taller than me. So that was a big problem. So it's pretty much we taught everybody new spots, new choreography. So I want to say we started from scratch for this year. So that was a little, it was a little crazy because, you know, with the time restraint and some kids, this is their first production. So they had no clue. They don't know what, when we call wings, what is downstage, what's upstage, like all of those things, which is actually great, good for them, you know, for now that they're learning all of these things. And like you said, we started from the Fox Theater and then we changed into a different venue. So because the Nutcracker, as we all know, there's a choreography on stage and there's a choreography backstage. So now that we changed into CPAC, we also had to figure out where to stand while all this cabinet, the chairs are moving. We had to figure that out so we're not in the way to keep the kids safe, like all those little things. But I really think that it's great that we're able to do it because, you know, especially for kids, they thrive through what do you call it? Like they need to be in the norm. Like they need to go back to what they used to do. So at least by just wearing a mask, I thought it was such a small price to pay that they were able to still rehearse, see their friends and perform, even though they're like this. But at least it's kind of like the closest to the normal. And I think that they really needed that. They needed to go and see their friends. But also with the casting changes, you know, in the middle of the run, we also started having issues because, you know, some got they got sick, some needed to quarantine, some has tests, exams, and all those things. So unlike with the company, you guys were able to have emergency rehearsals on stage. We don't get to do that. So what happened was, for example, for party kids, let's say spot number 1, she would have 3 other alternates. So let's just say all of them cannot perform. So we would decide like who is the quickest one who can jump in that spot number 1. So while you guys are putting makeup on, we're at the back and trying to put that girl who's, let's say she's a spot number 5. We're trying to put her in spot number 1 and kind of like try to do everything with her in the dressing room. But you know, the crazy part now looking back, actually it's truly amazing because you can see the camaraderie that you see in the kids, that they all have this one goal, that they want to have a great show. So they try to really help that person to feel comfortable on that new spot that they're thrown into. And I really think that's why we have CDE, why we have the center. It's not that we're just teaching them dance, but we are actually even teaching them life in general. Because, you know, like just in the theater, somebody's not there, you have to hop in. The audience should not know that there was an issue. And they, among themselves, they realize that show must go on, life must go on. And whatever is thrown at you, you just really have to do the best that you can at that moment. So I really think bringing your kids in dance like helps helps them a lot, not just being in the studio, but being out in the world as well. So I hope I covered everything you asked.
I think you've been very thorough. No, I think you've been very thorough. You've done a wonderful job. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, is that having that social integration for the children and having them able to not only be around their peers, but also be invested in a part of a larger production is a really valuable experience to have, and does give them a break from everything that they've been dealing with. I mean, we don't know like how much this will impact our children, and I think that there needs to be a lot of priority on trying to give them the most that we can, regardless of like what's happening in the world. And it is true that putting your children into dance gives them social integration, as well as a lesson on diligence and hard work, but also on adaptability. And
Exactly.
it helps them. I know for myself, when I was younger, I was really, really crazy. And then they put me into ballet lessons, and I just centered and got really calm, because it was like, I had too much energy. And I find that even for company members today, we're better when we're dancing, because we have a way to physically process the emotions that we feel. And I think that physical movement for children, especially after being stuck inside and in their homes for so long, being able to get out on stage and move and participate in these rehearsals is really, really special. And I think that I didn't engage with the kids too much. Like, we were pretty separated until we would put together the party scene rehearsals. But especially seeing the kids in the hallway and the chicks, there was like a palpable excitement for them to be there, and to see people walking through the hallways, and to see especially the chicks' reactions to all of our costumes was always my favorite. Like, a snowflake would walk by, and as a dancer, snowflakes, we're just like, oh, we're just another corps member. But one of the chicks would be like, she's so pretty, and like, look at that crown and stuff. And so I think that it's a really exciting thing, and I'm really happy that our organization made that decision for the kids, and we did so in a way that was aware of the variables that we had to deal with, and we kind of tried to find the best possible solutions, but also were able to give them an experience that is really important. I mean, I did Nutcracker as a kid. I don't know whether or not you guys did. Raise your hand if you did. I think none of you says, okay, Sicily. Abigail.
Abigail, you did?
Wait, yes, I did.
I
But
yeah,
like 12 years
thought
old. I was
so.
like thinking 12 years old. Oh yeah, that's a kid. Yes.
Yeah, I think that counts. Let me see what's going on in the chat.
Matthew said she was involved as a backstage mom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful thing to be able to give them, and I can't imagine how important it must be for them, but it's a special thing. And I mean, part of the aspect of Nutcracker is very much like a cultural community. And so like, there are so many families that it is a yearly tradition to go to Nutcracker. And that is like, to us, it's just 3 hours of chaos before we have more chaos, before we deal with being tired the next day, and the costumes and the hair and the getting ready and all those things. But for a lot of families and for a lot of people that show up to these shows, it is like one of their annual things that they look forward to. It's a big day. People get dressed up, they go to dinner. So I think audience members and dancers and the Atlanta Ballet organization being able to do Nutcracker this year and to have successfully done all of our shows is probably the closest thing we've been able to do to establish something that feels a little bit more normal.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have something to invest into and kind of dive into. Ultimately, that's a lot more fulfilling than not working or not dealing with the chaos and the roughness of Nutcracker that we all know is familiar, plus many, many other things.
Yeah. There's a question. Let's see. How did COVID protocols affect the children's cast? They wore masks. What else did we need to do with them? So they were also part of our testing backstage. Students were, and Sharon, our dean, did another spreadsheet, talking more about spreadsheets, to make sure that every cast was involved. Every children's cast was involved in that. So we were protecting the students by doing all of our protocols on the adult end of things. And they were also being tested in our regular testing.
Yeah, and I have a story about that too, because so the first time a cast arrives in the theater, so Sharon would say, hey, so let's go have that test. And they would all freaking out. They're like, what kind of test is that? Is that PCR or rapid? And I have to say, no, I think it's rapid and it just tickles your nose. And they're like, are you sure it doesn't go all the way up? And it's like, no, like my child who was 6 years old did not cry for this one, but she have had PCR who was like, she was terrible crying for that. So it helped. So when they were there, it's like, oh yeah, it just tickled.
The students were so, I mean, everybody was so resilient, but it was amazing to see how resilient the kids were throughout all of this. And me personally, that was a huge inspiration for me, because I'm like, okay, those little ones can do this and they can get their little job done, then we can too.
Yeah.
And that, I think that was huge in getting us all through Nutcracker. And yes, it was chaos, but I feel like it's worth it because we provided, at least my perspective is that we were able to provide like that escape and that normalcy, like you were saying, Darian, for our patrons. And that's what's important.
It's a good chaos to make everything better.
Show business. Show business is always a little chaotic. We're just adding a little bit to it.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely, I think across the board, there was a big sense of gratitude. I mean, grateful that we had the chance to even experience chaos in comparison to going a whole year not performing. At the end of the day, we are so lucky to be involved in working for an arts organization because it's something that we all feel is meaningful to us. And in general, like when you're living a life where you're pursuing something that's meaningful, and if you're lucky enough to be able to incorporate that into your job, it's safe to say that you would rather be working your job than not working. And so I think that it's really special that we're able to do our job regardless of when it's difficult, regardless of all the things that we had to manage. It's kind of like we would so willingly adopt the responsibility of managing the burden of anything that happens during this production than not be able to like take on that burden. And I think that there's so much joy in being able to share it with people who come and support us, especially like the people who are here tonight that are interested in listening to us talk about the same thing for 45 minutes to an hour. And I think that there's a lot of gratitude from many different sides of the situation.
Yeah, I know. I'm grateful too that, I mean, I want to mention how grateful I am to be able to work around such amazing artists and staff members, like on stage and behind the scene, because we have a lot of extremely high caliber people working together to get this done. And you don't always see those people on stage. Obviously, we see the dancers, but we have staff that are specifically trained to do their job. We have orchestra that are specifically trained and skilled to do their job, and crew members. And each of those people doing that specific job is what makes all the magic happen on stage that you see. So I'm incredibly thankful to have the opportunity to work with you guys on this call. And also
I mean, from like the general public perspective, it's so easy to look at a dancer and be like, oh, they must be so hardworking to get where they are. And that's true. But as Sicily was saying, it should go without saying, but I think it's important to highlight the fact that like, it's like for every one individual dancer you see As hard as they've worked to reach that place in their career, there is a person behind the scenes in the administrative staff, either working with the kids, working on costuming, our crew, orchestra, Nicole backstage calling all of the lighting cues, our lighting, our artistic staff. Like, it's cliche, but it takes a village phrase rings true for a production of this scale. And so for every dancer, there's probably like 5 people that don't get the applause that are doing their respective amount of work. And I think like tonight was kind of a chance to be able to talk about that and show that, which is like there's so many unsung heroes of Nutcracker aside from the dancers. And we are lucky to have a couple of you guys here with us tonight.
I think Lauren
As
has
we,
a question.
oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I see a question from Lauren. Oh, she wants to know, Darian, what your first Nutcracker role was.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is funny. Yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up, if you have any last burning questions, feel free to rapid fire them in the chat, and we'll just kind of go through them before I take things away. My first role in Nutcracker, I was an angel. We had these little long hoop skirts, and they were supposed to touch the floor. And it was like the little footy shuffle that you did, and it made us look like we were floating. But it was for all of the opening music for second act in Nutcracker, which is a very long track of music for no dancing. Yeah, look at Abby. So we held these little Christmas trees that had lights on them. And my mom actually made all of those Christmas trees. So she was like spraying them and putting them together. But we had to start in the back of the audience and slow shuffle our way through the audience all the way up on the stairs. And then to even get to the stage to do our whole dance. And so it was like five minutes of 6 12-year-old girls with the like type of smile just plastered on full, like probably a time when a mask would have been more beneficial. and just shuffling it was like the most boring thing. And oh man, did I take it serious. I shuffled so little. It was, which is the spirit you need as a child jumping into a Nutcracker production, which is just anything you do is the most important contribution that anyone's ever witnessed. But yeah, I think that was my first Nutcracker role, just a little angel. Well, I don't think we have any more. Oh, wait. Yes, I don't think we have any more questions, but in case you don't know, we do have a program coming up very soon. We have Snow White, which is our AB2, and Academy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Abigail.
Well, Academy and actually the student division are actually joining us as well for this year.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, the student division, those are kids from MCC and Virginia Highlands and Buckhead. So they're actually joining us this year. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, so we have the Academy division, we have the Atlanta Ballet second company, and I believe there are some company members involved in that show.
That's
so
right.
That show is going to be happening next weekend.
Next weekend, yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's coming up. Yeah. So that will be next weekend. And then the following weekend, we have our program Firebird, which is super, super exciting. We have a world premiere of my ballet, Dr. Rainbow's Infinity Mirror, and a world premiere of Anderson Souza's ballet, Inherited. Just I can't wait to see it. It's going to have live music. The composer is going to be on stage with the dancers, which is always a treat. And then we have a world premiere from our resident choreographer, Claudia Schreier. I will be performing in that. And then we also have Firebird. So it's a really, really special production. I'm biased, but I think it's going to be really good. I think it's very exciting. It definitely has, as all mixed reps do, it has this ability to cater to different tastes. I know that Anderson's is a lot more emotionally packed and weighted, and there's so much beauty in that, and he has really put a lot of his personal experiences into that, which is a gift to be able to share that with an artist who made something that's so personal, and for him to be able to be so vulnerable with where his piece is coming from, I think is just a gift. Anytime you see an artist that is tied so closely to their work, it's a really special thing to partake in. And Firebird is going to be very theatrical and fun and bright, and my ballet has its own set of quirks and silliness, so that will kind of be the brighter moment, like silly, fun, whimsical. And then Claudia Schreier's is her classic, very movement-based, very rhythm, shape-oriented, very much about the musicality and the nuances of how to interpret music. So I think there's very much a little bit of everything for everyone. And I hope that you guys are interested in coming to see that and supporting us, because we would all love to see you there. I think we have one more question and then we can drop off. Yeah, I think I do. I think it's impossible for a choreographer to not choreograph similar things, because a choreographer tends to make work in their own body or to test things out in their own body before telling them on other people. And because every person who dances has their own individual way of moving, there's kind of no way to filter that out of the choreography. But most of the time, what ends up happening is once you put it onto a dancer, it will take on a life of its own, different from what you or the choreographer made. So I think that Yuri Poskov has like his own calling cards choreographically that you'll always be able to see and pick out. And I feel like when I look at his work, if I didn't immediately recognize and someone told me that it was his work, I would be like, oh, of course, there was that thing, and like I've seen that before. And from my experience, as I've gotten into choreographing, that was something I was really scared of. I was really scared of like the repetition and being like, is this too similar from what I've done before? Is it all the same? Should I desire for more difference in movement quality? And then I kind of realized that it's a beautiful way to leave your signature on your work, and it's part of what makes your work different from other people. And so I think that like leaning into that and kind of hoping that audience members will be like, oh, that is something that I know about their choreography because I've seen it before. I think that can be a really useful tool when it's done intentionally. So yeah, I think there are similarities. I think that Firebird and Nutcracker both share a high level of theatrics that is always very entertaining in a ballet, and very dramatic lighting that is going to be really beautiful on stage. Let me see.
Well, received another question wondering if any of the other panelists have things they would like to share about our upcoming shows. Like, what will Firebird and Snow White look like for the rest of you?
Take it away.
Who wants to go first?
I think for Snow White, we're kind of doing the same thing from the Nutcracker. I believe the principals might be taking off their mask, but all the kids will be wearing masks. And of course, we try to do social distancing as much as we can, but we're really pretty excited about this because it's Snow White, like we'll see all these 7 dwarves and all that. So it's kind of different, something that you don't see every year. So that's nice. And it's actually really good for younger kids because this is just an hour show. So you can totally bring your kids and they should be able to sit on it because there are little comedy scenes with the dwarves. It should be fun. and try to forget this COVID thing, for an hour.
So for me,
Sicily. Oh,
Go ahead.
go, Abby, go.
So for me, we are finishing up Snow White costumes in the costume shop, and we will be loading those onto the trucks on Saturday. And on Monday, we will unload at the theater. So the first week that I will be, now all of next week, I'll be at the theater, rehearsing and performing. We start performing like the third day we're there. Snow White. And then while I'm there, our costume shop will be finishing up costumes for the Firebird rep, and they will be making their way over a little bit at a time in the cars. And as those come in, I will be organizing those and putting them where they go and all of that fun business. And then the next week is crazy because we'll be performing Snow White in the morning and rehearsing Firebird in the afternoon. And then probably Firebird in the evening. And then as soon as we have our last show of Snow White, we have our first opening show of Firebird. So it's pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy, but that's why I have a great team of wardrobe with me, because they're ready for it.
Mhm. Yeah, our wardrobe team is absolutely incredible. We are very lucky to have all of our wardrobe ladies. They are just I can't say enough wonderful things about them. It's just
And Dennis.
amazing.
And Dennis.
Oh my gosh.
Not to forget Dennis.
Could not forget. He is an angel. Yeah,
Well,
Sicily, what is scheduling like
Yeah.
for all of this?
If we are comparing to Nutcracker, right? We are business as usual right now, because we are continuing with our protocols, updating everything related to the current CDC guidelines, continuing to do regular testing and scheduling that with our partner Epitome, getting ready to go into theater. Our daily schedule is being affected in the same way, and casting is being affected in the same way that it was for Nutcracker, because we have people in and out just to make sure that we have layers and layers of protection. So every day we're just sending out changes and shuffling things around and updating and going with the wind and making sure that we can put on a great show for everyone. Just a little note, when we were talking earlier, Kids in Step performances are happening, and those are our performances for the public schools. We have tons of those for not Nutcracker, for Snow White coming up. So I'm really excited to be able to.
I think we have 3 Kids in Steps for
Yeah.
Snow White. Oh,
Yeah.
4. Sorry. Yes, I
4.
forgot
We
about the
added-
second week.
We added
Yes.
one. Yeah. So that will be a wonderful experience for those kids. And a lot of those kids, this will be potentially their first ever field trip and first ever
Aw.
ballet. So that is really exciting to note, because of these COVID times. There are kids that are coming of age and going on their first field trip to come see us.
That's really cute.
I know.
Really sweet. Yeah, and Snow White is such a good thing for them to be able to see. I think everybody loves seeing a Disney movie turned into a ballet. I mean, I know they were stories before they were Disney movies, but when you hear Snow White, you kind of think of the cartoon. So
Right.
these are always very fun for the kids, because there's they already know the story, they're already familiar with it, which I think makes it something that they can really connect to. It's very nice, very
Yeah, and
sweet.
with Kids in Steps too, it's fun to have them actually, because sometimes the dancers the prince just lift the princess up and they all go wild.
Yeah.
They do react, so it's not like, you need to start clapping. They don't clap, they cheer.
So a lot of times they are more interesting, like their reactions are more interesting to listen to as a dancer. And I know that oftentimes in kids performances, I felt more connected to the audience because I can hear them. And I think audience members think they're supposed to be polite, and at least I can only speak for myself, but I would love when I love when there's a little bit of loudness in the audience if it's at the right time.
Right.
Yeah, it's really sweet for sure. Yeah.
Woohoo!
All right. I feel like this is a good place to leave off with everyone. Thank you, my wonderful panelists, for joining. I will be seeing you around in the studios tomorrow or the following days. And I really appreciate everybody for coming and joining in and talking to us. It seems like a small thing to show up for something like this, but it is a really nice way to connect and know that there are people that are really interested in what we do, and ultimately what we do would not have any meaning if we were not able to share it with people. So if thank you for coming to see Nutcracker. If you did, thank you for being interested and being here tonight and giving us your time, and hopefully you will continue to give us your time for future shows as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Darian.
Thank you,
you.
Darian.
Thank you guys. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.